Hello and welcome. I'm Melinda Akinlami. Tonight, President Buhari to know his fate tomorrow as the Abuja division of the Court of Appeal delivers judgment on a suit challenging his qualification for the 2019 presidential election. Former President Dr. Goodluck Jonathan insists implementation of key recommendations of the 2014 National Conference resolved many challenges facing the nation. Edo State Governor Godwin Obaseki talks tough, vows to resist pressure from politicians to use public funds for individual purposes. And United Kingdom raises threat to British shipping in Iranian waters to highest level on risk of attack in the Gulf region.
On business news tonight, OPEC sees lower demand for its crude oil in 2020 as it cuts supply forecast for non-cartel members.
In sports news, Serena Williams is one win away from equaling Margaret Court's record of 24 Grand Slam singles titles after booking her spot in Saturday's Wimbledon final.
And from Abuja, Senate debates African Continental Free Trade Agreement recently signed by President Muhammadu Buhari says Nigeria must take advantage of deal to avoid being made a dumping ground.
The Abuja division of the Court of Appeal will on Friday, July the 12th, deliver judgment on a suit challenging the qualification of President Muhammadu Buhari for the 2019 presidential election. A three-member panel of the Court of Appeal, presided over by Justice Atinuke Akomolafe Wilson, had on Monday, July the 8th, reserved judgment in the suit after listening to the argument canvassed by counsel to both parties in the matter. Mr. Kalu Kalu, Mr. Labaran Ismail, and Mr. Hassi El Khouris had approached the appellate court to set aside the judgment of the Federal High Court in Abuja, which declined to hear their suit challenging President Buhari's educational qualification before the conduct of the 2019 general election. Now, amongst the reliefs were a declaration that President Buhari submitted false information regarding his qualification for the purpose of contesting the presidential election. The appellants claimed that the Federal High Court erred in law in its decision because they did not challenge a primary election that produced President Buhari as the APC candidate. It's day 7 of the Presidential Election Tribunal sitting on the People's Democratic Party's petition against the election of President Buhari. 7 witnesses appeared today on behalf of the PDP, all of whom accused the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, of manipulating the results in order to favor the president as the winner of the February 23rd election. The witnesses alleged that in most parts of the north, there was massive cancellation and mutilation of results to favor the All Progressives Congress, APC. Our correspondent, Amaka Okafo, has that report.
The hearing in the petition of the People's Democratic Party and its presidential candidate against the election of President Muhammadu Buhari resumes after a one-day recess. More witnesses and documents were presented to the tribunal in support of the petition. One of the witnesses, a retired major in the Nigerian Army, Major Yahaya Siko, in his evidence in chief, alleges election malpractices in Kaduna State. He also told the tribunal that wrong figures were allocated to the president and the APC. As such, he refused to sign the result sheet as required by law. Another witness, Mr. Khalid Kubu, alleges that even though votes were cast during the election in his hometown, in Borno State, a bomb attack forced everyone to disperse, paving way for the electoral umpire to impute votes for the president when the votes were not counted. Yet another witness, Mr. John Makama, told the tribunal that he refused to sign the result sheets in the Sanga local government area on behalf of the PDP because the results were manipulated by the electoral officer in charge of the said election. Another witness, Dr. Abdul Rahman Usman, claims that the result sheets were not made available to agents of the PDP in the Kaduna North local government area as required by law, and yet results were announced. On the cross-examination, however, none of the witnesses could identify the persons they claimed mutilated the election results or the voting materials. The hearing has been adjourned to the 12th of July 2019 for continuation. Amaka Okafo, Channels Television News.
In another trial, 21 soldiers of Operation Lafia Dole are soon to be tried by a general court-martial. The theater commander, Operation Lafia Dole, Major General Benson Akinroloyo, confirmed this to journalists today, shortly after inaugurating the court-martial. He charged the president of the court-martial, Brigadier General Abdullahi Ibrahim, and members of his team to discharge their duties diligently and ensure that justice is served. He added that the military is an institution known for its maintenance of discipline, which is necessary for sustaining its operational efficiency. The nation is no doubt facing a lot of challenges, and when you ask someone about the solutions, you might get different views on the way forward. Former President Dr. Goodluck Jonathan has preferred solutions to the nation's problems and asked the federal government to take urgent steps to address them. Our political correspondent, Seun Okinbaloye, has this report.
Kidnapping, banditry, insurgency are some of the problems confronting Nigeria. The nation is in search for solutions. Here, our former President Goodluck Jonathan, who is chairing this event, the book presentation by Senator Femi Okunromu, is proffering solution to the problems.
I believe that the solutions to most of the problems we face today lie in a honest assessment of the recommendations of the 2014 National Conference. If we take politics out of our consideration, there is every likelihood that a diligent implementation of the key recommendations of the conference will lead the nation out of the woods.
The former president says logistics, timing, and politics did not allow him to implement the report when he was in office, but he insists urgent steps must be made to resolve the lingering crises.
I understand that efforts are being made towards addressing some of these challenges. However, we seem to play politics with sensitive and serious matters that affect us.
Other speakers are very blunt on the way forward for Nigeria.
You can never get anything in this country, no matter what program you are doing, until you establish a federal system. Now, you are wasting your time. Restructuring now, or no peace in Nigeria.
The way forward to make the continuing unity of Nigeria a patriotic goal is to restructure the polity and revert very quickly to the federal constitution under which Nigeria became independent.
The restructuring debate has been on the table for so long. It is back now again in the front burner. Whether the debate for or against, what most Nigerians are anticipating is a decisive action on those issues that make many Nigerians shed tears. Seun Okinbaloye, reporting for Channels Television News.
The police have arrested 65 more members of the Islamic Movement of Nigeria following a fresh protest in the nation's capital today. The arrest is coming on the heels of arraignment of 38 members of the sect at 3 different magistrate courts in Abuja. The police commissioner for the Federal Capital Territory, Mr. Balashi Roma, explained that those arrested today will be screened before being charged to court.
Members of the Islamic Movement of Nigeria running for safety after the police dispersed their procession. This time, the protest took place around the Federal Secretariat in Abuja. However, some of them were not so fortunate as they were picked up by the police.
We came out to continue to protest with respect to our leaders' seriously deteriorating health. And then, as we came out in mass, all of a sudden, the police started tear gassing the protesters and then even shooting live ammunition.
65 members of the movement were arrested by the police, and they are currently being screened ahead of their arraignment in court.
What really happened today is that members of the Islamic Movement of Nigeria still came out. By our estimation, we expected that they would just do their processions in a peaceful manner and go. However, they started burning tires, and inciting policemen started throwing stones, using catapults at policemen. This was really unruly. This resulted in the arrest. We've arrested about 65 of them. We'll screen them. Those to be charged to court will immediately be charged to court.
Last Tuesday, some 40 members of the group were arrested after they stormed the National Assembly. 38 of them were arraigned in court for acts such as criminal conspiracy, disturbance of public peace, possession of deadly weapon, among other offenses. While 28 of them were granted conditional bail, even as the Shiites say they will continue to demonstrate over the release of their leader, still in detention.
At a less controversial gathering, the civil rights community and the federal government have been celebrating the 3rd African Anti-Corruption Day with the theme towards a common African position on asset recovery. At the event in Abuja, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. Boss Mustafa, affirms the commitment of the government to tackle corruption. Also speaking at a separate event, the Solicitor General of the Federation renews the call for African countries to collaborate in the fight against graft.
The hall is packed full as anti-corruption crusaders converged on Abuja to mark the 3rd African Anti-Corruption Day. The chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission sets the tone for the event with a renewed call for synergy among agencies involved in the fight against corruption.
More than ever before, we need more collaboration, and I'm happy. Almost all the law enforcement agencies in this country are represented in this hall. Almost all the professional bodies are also represented in this hall. That's a good encouragement in the fight against corruption. When government agencies, different bodies, continents, and countries partner and synergize on collaborative ventures like this, the benefits are enormous.
For the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, the need for the international community to repatriate stolen funds is key to the fight against corruption.
This government is committed to halting the menace of corruption and will continue to build and strengthen institutions to block leakages. Policies will be developed and enforced to achieve this noble goal, including creating an enabling environment for all Nigerians to strive on a level playing ground. We must be our nation's keeper by saying no to corruption and reporting any act of corruption around us.
A former Minister of External Affairs appeals to Nigerians to join the government in combating corruption.
We must give our support to the government while we insist as a people to a permanent end to impunity and zero tolerance for official corruption in Nigeria. So we must join him in reversing the inheritance of poor governance, which has deeply contributed to and continues to endanger peace and security, justice, transparency, employment, and development.
The 11th of July every year is set aside as a day to review and brainstorm on the global fight against corruption. The theme of this year's celebration is towards a common African position on asset recovery.
In part 2, after the break, we have more on the anti-corruption fight, and the Executive Director of Transparency International Nigeria, Mr. Anwar Rafsanjani, joins us to examine the issue. Stay with us.